Well, sports fans, this is like a broccoli soup. It's really good. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the LGBTQ and the other letters of the alphabet that are being stuck in there. But I've got a lot of years of observation. So what I'm about to say is the truth and it makes sense. There's an old saying that you cannot put a square peg in a round hole. Those of you that are my age, you remember that it looked like a little bench up on legs and had different shapes. And you had to put the shapes in the hole of the little red and blue ball with the triangles and the circles. And it was to teach kids motor skills and how to look at something and go, that one goes in here. This was not made to go up somebody's butt. Okay. This was made to go into a vagina. And people get really mad when I say that. I think I've been very sensitive and understanding towards people who have same-sex attractions. I think if people are honest, most have had strange stuff float through them from time to time. I could never be gay. The anal sex thing and sucking somebody's ding dong just doesn't appeal to me. I've never done it. I don't want to do it. Sometimes I've seen a guy with a good looking chest and felt that momentary lust, but I'm not into guys. Hairy underarms, sweaty, they smell different. I couldn't date a guy. I don't want to roll around in the bed with a guy and come home to that. I don't. I remember when I used to go to the steam bath out west, there was an older guy, you go in there, you pay the fee, and you go in nude. And some guy says, "Oh, I noticed you don't have any pubic hairs under your arms." And I'm like, "Yeah, I shave." And he wanted to have a discussion. I said, "Dude, I don't want to talk about pubic hairs. They're gross." Well, but I think whatever you think, I don't care. I don't want to talk about underarm hairs. And people, I'm just going to say it. And people are going to disagree with me on this, but it's the damn truth. I'm going to say it about lesbians. I have never met a well-adjusted lesbian woman. I have never met a well-adjusted gay man ever in my life. If you notice something about gay women, they're really trying to get attention. They're trying to endear themselves to the world around them. You look at Rosie. You look at Ellen DeGeneres. She doubled over as the voice for Finding Nemo and the ditzy blue fish or whatever. And it's amazing. You look at groups like Wham, you look at Elton John, and they've risen to the charts with emotionally driven logic. Women love Elton John. I think more women like Elton John than men do, my personal. Elton John is rather flamboyant. The Queen of England loved him. Groups like Wham, Culture Club, Boy George, he was just flat out strange and had an addiction to drugs. And I remember his own comment that one of his greatest thrilling moments is when his brother pulled his pants down in church, or a boy did, and showed his pee-pee. When it comes to gays and lesbians, one thing stands head and shoulders all the time. One will be a dom, one will be a sub. And why is that? Why is it that lesbians will use a dildo? Now stop and think about that. If they're against men, why would they use something that's shaped like a man's rod and use that? Kind of hypocritical, don't you think? Now, I say that as a man, I have found a lot of erotic pleasure in watching videos of two pretty lipstick lesbians touching, fondling, kissing, licking. It's quite the thing. The Bible says sin is pleasurable for a season, and it is. But what I'm saying in this video is homosexuality is destructive to a society. That's a fact. I look at lesbian women, and every lesbian woman I know, they've got mental problems. Every single one. I've never met a well-adjusted lesbian woman in my life. They act butchy, sweaty. Most of them are hideous to look at in real life. They're not attractive. And I don't understand why another girl would find that attractive. I knew one in Colorado. She wasn't bad looking, but the mate she chose looked like a dude. And a guy is constantly panting after her. She'll never date him. And you ask yourself, why would a woman stop dating a guy and date a girl that acts like, walks like, talks like a guy? And people try to tell me it's okay to be gay. Why do you choose a sissy in a relationship or a masculine? What's that all about? You know, you don't generally see two pretty feminine women falling in love with each other. What you have are bull dykes. You have the sports bra girl, or girls that look like they're damn umpires for a baseball team with a loud, authoritative voice, baseball cap sticking out the side, wearing man pants and man shirt. My question is what is the attraction between two equally not attractive women and they quote fall in love? I have a theory about that. And it goes like this. And yes, you're going to have to forgive me. I got a hellacious cold this week. Stuff is going around the area bad. The whole thing about the gay thing is a lot of women tend to have a boo-boo in a relationship. Or, let's be fair, girl goes to school as a young girl and she's not endowed with pretty looks. She's snubbed, ignored, made fun of, and teased by all the other boys. She's the outcast. But then another girl that's not so pretty comes along with self-esteem issues, and they both suddenly like each other, become friends, and then they start experimenting. This is a no-brainer. Even if it's wrong. And this is something our American society and Christians in our cultural America, cultural Christians. Now, do not misunderstand me. America's got a lot of cultural Christians, but not biblical ones. They might have gotten saved. They never grew. They never matured. They're what I call diapered saints. And all of us have varying degrees of Christian maturity. I do too. But you have some that are just babies. They never grow up. My ex-wife is one of those. I've met many women that they talk about God, hands up in the air at church, and they're some of the worst people I know. It's a fact. Women like to wear Jesus on their sleeve and they act like twats. So the one cancels out the other. What you say and your actions don't line up. And yeah, okay, moving right along. So the next issue, when you have a society reject you, I went through bullying and harassment all the days of my life. When I was in school, I was teased at for thick glasses. And I remember an episode when I was young. We were in an elementary school, and there was a kid that he was troubled, and a lot of kids didn't hang out with him, but he and I became buddies. And I was laughed at, teased, and rejected. And I remember one time we were running, the girls were chasing us, and we ran into a fort made out of big balls of sagebrush up against a barbed wire fence and cow patties stacked up. And if you went in there, nobody could see you. And there was this little piece of broken plywood that we used as a door. Girls didn't want to go in there because their cow pies stacked all the way around it. It was ingenious. And I ran in there, and the kid says, "Jump in there, I'll cover for you." And he jumped on top of me and he started massaging my shoulders. Now, I didn't feel an attraction to him. I never looked at him and said, "Ooh, wow, wow, woo." But the touch, I remember saying, "Man, that feels good." He said, "You need it, man." Didn't dawn on me then, but I found out later he was gay. I mean, he had struggled with things. He had told me about living with his sister who dated a boyfriend, and they would do abusive things to him, like make him take off his clothes and FUCK pillows on the couch and crazy stuff like that. Then when I got into middle school, I was down at the creek outside the edge of town, and he was down there. We're walking around. He pulled his pants down and had a big hairy boner and said, "You want?" I said, "Dude, no." I remember being shocked by that, and I felt the need to get away from him. I wonder how he's doing now. I feel for him because he grew up in a messed up environment. I don't have any hatred towards him, but I'll never forget something he told me. I mean, he had a roaring heart on. He's standing there with his pants down on a little island in the creek, and he dropped another name at that little mountain ski resort town and said, he and I do this all the time. And I said, he does? You know, he's on the football team. And it took me years to realize gay tendencies, lesbian tendencies are not black and white. You can have people that you think are popular and the cat's meow, and you'd never know what is going on in this thing up here. I've met men that had a same sex attraction that are well adjusted. They never acted on it except through, candidly, I remember I used to go into Yahoo chat. And I remember talking to a guy from Canada. He said, I don't look the gay part. He says, I like women, but I like men. And I've never actually had an encounter with a man, but I'm curious. And there's an idea that most of the gays talk in femi fruity voices and wear fruity rainbow colored underwear. Yeah, there's those. And those kind of bother me. They're what I call your militants. But what I'm saying in here is fact. People get mad at me for saying this. According to the Bible, homosexuality is a sin, but so is adultery, so is fornication. Ask me to define that word, I can't. I tend to think of it as sex before marriage. And guess what? Most Christians and most Americans do that all the time. And they have little or no conviction that that's not okay. Christians are very materialistic in this country. They have no conviction about that. It's idolatry. Christians have a problem with gluttony, and they have no conviction about that. Christians have a problem with doggy and pet OCD and have no conviction about that. So while the church will gang up on the sins that everybody in their congregation doesn't do, the church is silent about the sins that their congregation does do. I've sat in many, 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 many churches in my life, and I've noticed a couple things. Number one, Americans make cult shrines out of preachers. Oh, did you hear Chuck Swindoll? Did you hear John MacArthur? Did you hear Dr. David Jeremiah, Dr. Stanley? Did you hear blah, 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 blah? And they do it with the preacher. Oh, you got to hear this guy. You got to hear this guy. No, I don't got to hear this guy. I got to hear God. This guy's a preacher, but I noticed something. They never, ever, 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 ever in any church I've attended convict, confront, and rebuke the crap that goes on in female Christian culture. They don't talk about it. For example, they'll beat up on men for the following things: porn, masturbation, and lust. They'll go on and on and on about it, but they never talk about the behaviors and the attitudes and the sicko dog OCD, materialistic OCD, the flake culture. They never address women and tell them what it means to be truly a godly woman. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being sexy and a Christian, but that's reserved for your man, not to spill out into the streets. And most Christian marriages to me are a joke. They're the land of make-believe. They go to church, they're fighting in the car when you get there. I've seen it, pulled up in my truck, and you can see the couple in the car with the kids arguing and screaming, and they'll get out. I'll get out, and they'll look at me, Michael, how are you doing? I'm doing all right. How are you? I'm doing well. Yeah, right. I just saw the fight. There's too much fake in Christianity in our American culture. Women will condemn men. Christian women will condemn men for fapping, masturbating. And all I need to do is look at them and say, you don't give me a reason to even have an interest in you, let alone be faithful to you. So who cares what I do? And I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't care if you're a Christian woman or a non Christian woman. Most women in this country have little or nothing to be desired and they're liabilities financially, emotionally, and they'll kick our butts and destroy a relationship. That's not my opinion. That's a fact of observing for nearly 60 years. And I love women, but women in this culture are a mess. But churches do not convict or talk about women. But also, evangelical churches will scream and yell about abortion and homosexuality. I don't know why they do that because the people in their congregation don't support abortion or homosexuality, but they never talk about the sins that their congregation does. And I've noticed a trend and a MO that pastors will never offend the women because they know deep down inside if you drive the women out, the men will leave and you have no church. So they say, I'm here to declare God and I don't care if everybody's offended. That's not entirely true. They will shield and avoid anything that makes women uncomfortable. They'll beat up on the men all the time because they can get away with it. You got women sitting in a congregation where preachers up in the pulpit can see cleavage showing. They won't address that. No pun intended. But Christians have a tendency to condemn those things they don't practice while they're silent about their own sins. I've heard lies about masturbation. If you masturbate, you'll go blind. If you masturbate, blah, 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 blah. Somebody said years ago, Pacific's going to masturbate himself to death. Hardly. And people make all kinds of grandiose statements. The bottom line is the Bible says if a man looks at a woman to lust, he's already committed adultery. Does that mean women don't lust because it says a man looks at a woman? Women look at men with lust, but it doesn't say that, does it? People try to say that masturbation is wrong because of Onan in the Old Testament. God told Onan to go into his wife and impregnate her. And he did his thing and pulled out and let the seed spill on the ground, and God was displeased. And silly Christians in America try to say, oh, that's talking about masturbation. He wasn't masturbating. He was inside the woman. Dum dum. He did not want to impregnate her. And that was where God got upset. If you're going to make a case for something, make it on truth. Don't make something walk on all fours to fit your twisted view. Onan was not masturbating, and that's not what that was about. And it's amazing how many people in America claim to believe in God and claim to know the Bible, and they did not read the story and read exactly what it was God was angry about. People try to say abusers of themselves. Masturbating is abusing myself? Really? How so? Boy, it feels good to have an orgasm. It really does. I don't think that's what the context is. There are Christians from one end of the spectrum to another. James Dobson doesn't think masturbation is wrong. Surprisingly, Mr. Focus on the Family, but he had a successful radio program that white knighted women. If you go back and listen to any of Dobson's old programs, he never ever talks about the sins of women. He always talks about the fathers that aren't there and the fathers this and the men this. And it's all he catered to women and he made a financial empire off of it. That's a fact. You see a lot of Christians. Dr. David Jeremiah is worth $50 million. And people try to argue that. Well, he was blessed by God. A minister of the gospel is worth $50 million. Something's wrong with this picture. Something's really wrong with this picture. You look at all the big names out there. Look at all the big names. They're worth a ton of money. Why? Do they have a problem with loving money? Do they have a problem with idolatry and materialism? Probably. How come the church is silent about those things? The church beats up on sexual sin. And I'm sorry, if you go to most churches, you got to ask yourself a question. Why would you want to have sex with anybody in there? Most of them aren't desirable. And they're screaming and yelling about sexual impropriety. But you know what's funny? Even Pat Robertson admitted to having sex before he married his wife. And you heard about Jimmy Swaggart, who was frequenting prostitutes. David Hawking, a man I respected, was frequenting prostitutes as well. People that harp on stuff are guaranteed to fall into it. The Bible says, take heed lest you fall. Back to homosexuality and lesbian, I understand why people get into this stuff. I'm not being insensitive. I'm not homophobic. There's times that when you are ignored, rejected, you go through the stress of life, somebody comes up and gives you attention, and it's not that you're in love, it's not that you're gay, it's that, damn, this meets a need that's not getting fulfilled. You go to most churches today and they're telling you, wait on the Lord, wait on the Lord, God will bring you the perfect wife. 30, 40 years go by and nothing's forthcoming. Who's telling the truth? Women today in America aren't listening to God at all. So you go ahead and wait around all day. No one's going to come to your door. Okay? Because it takes two. And if all these women out here aren't listening to God, and I went through a journey myself of a lot of screwed up stuff. I went to Hong Kong to search for a woman. I went to Huntsville, Alabama. I went through the whole online merry-go-round, and I don't do it anymore. Somebody the other day said, why don't you get on the Facebook dating? I said, no, I'm done. I was done in 2015. I ended that. I went and saw a young lady and 20 years younger than me in the Philippines in 2018 that I met on Facebook. She had sent me a friend request. We talked and I wanted to see her and told her I couldn't marry her. All that did was create problems. I had the best trip I ever had in my life. 2 times I went to the Philippines. First time was a disaster. The second time, 2018, was great. The family loved me. They were good. But then I told her I cannot marry you. Then she wanted me to date her for the rest of my life and come once a year to see her. And I said, man, I can't live like that. There's $3,000 to go over there and back. And that's spending modestly, plane and everything. So, and you see something emerging on the social media. You look at the Filipinos now, they're not as sweet as innocent as they were just 10, 15 years ago. Women were desperate to find a guy. Now they're prima donnas. You can follow me. You can look at me, show armpit 1, armpit 2, 50,000 times, and you can put hearts and you look at all these pathetic men right underneath the comments. You're so sweet. Oh, I'd love to love you. Oh, I love you. You're beautiful. And she's ignoring every single one of those comments. And men are stupid. They really are. They're just dumb. We idolize and pedestalize women all over the world, and it's sick. And it always goes to these women's heads. But back to the gay and lesbian, always note that there's never equality in a gay and lesbian relationship. There will be a dominant and a submissive, which gives the credence to, it gives the proof that God has said it's a man and a woman. A man's the head of the house. So a woman will say, I don't want no man, but she'll submit herself to a dominant male acting lesbian. What part of hypocrisy is she not getting? So you want to rebel God, you want to rebel everything, and you hate men, but you go choose the very male-ish acting woman. Makes rational sense to me, right? Not. Same thing with men. You have your sissy, you have your dominant. And I've been very honest with people. I've been touched and felt and experimented with little things on the fringes of the homosexual world. And I just said, this is not for me. And men have been touched. And then they think I'm gay. No, you're not. Somebody gave you attention. It felt good. I mean, let's just be honest. Right or wrong. If somebody comes up and gives you attention and you've been going through the desert on a horse with no name for a long time, it may be twisted. It may not be what you are ideally, but somebody gave you attention. You go back to the 60s and gangs and men used to stand around in a circle and jack off in front of each other. I don't know why they thought it was fun. There's something very liberating about a bunch of men standing there feeling free to jack off in front of each other. Everybody say, well, that's really gay, but they weren't touching each other. They called them circle jerks. Our society has caused a lot of problems. And I'm going to blame America because American culture is a joke. Look at our evening news. Look at how they twist stories. Look at what they consider important. Oh, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, who gives a shit about them? I don't. But our media makes a big deal about losers just because they're in the star spotlight. Americans care more about professional football, basketball, baseball than anything of substance. Women culture's joke. I mean, shows like the Kardashians and 50,000 Shades of Grey and, just the whole Netflix followers and the Third Rock from the Sun and all these stupid little TV shows that are nothing more than a political agenda to get you to think the way they want you to think. I mean, the cartoons and the comics aren't even left alone. From Doonesbury by Gary Trudeau, who's a dyed-in-the-wool liberal, uses a dumb cartoon backdrop to push his political nonsense. And gone are the days of like Calvin and Hobbes and BC. BC actually promoted some Christian themes. And what was the Marmaduke? There was Family Circus and Peanuts. Charles Schultz supposedly was a Christian. But now they're political. They're just stupid. And I understand two guys feeling something towards each other. I understand two women. I've said before, I would have no problem marrying a woman that was in love with me but wanted to have a friend and get intimate with her. I would have no problem with that. It's wrong in God's eyes, but I would have no problem with her enjoying some intimacy with the female, provided the female wasn't some butch domineering. My point in this is it doesn't matter who you are. You can look at me and go, my gosh, you call yourself a Christian. Just because I'm a Christian doesn't mean I don't have shit flowing through the system that probably shouldn't be there. We all are a work in progress. And I'm going to say something honestly. I've looked at porn. I've looked at lesbian porn. It's fascinating. Women today make it difficult to get a date. The games that they play, the flirting and the slut teasing, and then they shame you when you show an interest in them. This is why a lot of people are going into porn, because women have they're immature and they've cock blocked us men left and right, but they're going out and getting something. Don't kid yourself. Whether it's a vibrator or a closet lesbian relationship, they're getting it. Or with some guy that's loaded with money. When you look at the whole lesbian gay thing, a lot of it's acting out. And I don't care what anybody says. I've never met a well-adjusted lesbian couple in my life. They fight and harangue and argue just like anybody else. The unfaithfulness between two gay married men is so ridiculous. How can you be faithful? You've already compromised the laws of God when he says a man and a woman. Now you marry a man and you can have sword fights together. But guess what? It's lust based. And when you go to a steam bath, I knew two men that were married. And when they showed up at the steam bath, they were fooling around with other guys, jacking each other off, hugging and kissing. You see, when you break down God's commands, everything splinters off from there. And I remember Pandora, the eclectic, some basement dweller girl that has a shitty channel, and it really is. It's junk. She can't talk in an articulative, coherent way. She did several videos saying Pacific Ocean Asia sucks. Whatever. I could care less about her opinion. She got angry at me because I did a video about this whole topic of homosexuality, and obviously she has lesbian tendencies, and she, instead of being open-minded and saying I disagree with him, she wanted to hate. And that's what happens from the gay community when you tell them no, it's not okay. I can't tell people you can't have the feelings you have. I can just tell you to practice this is against God's laws. And people hate me for that. That's stupid. And what those people are saying is, I don't have a right to have a dissenting view. Tell me you're not forcing your way upon me. Tell me, and I'll call you a liar. You want to be gay, nobody's stopping you. You want to be lesbian, nobody's stopping you. But just because everybody won't give you a group hug, you better get over yourself. If you're so confident that this is right, who gives a shit what anybody thinks, right? Something to think about. The fact that it bothers you ought to tell you something, that maybe you're in the wrong. This society can buffalo itself. Number one, the LGBT movement was started not by born again, on fire, passionate Christians. It was started by lost souls. And so whatever they choose to do, they're going to be right in their own eyes. Okay? They don't follow the commands, they have no conscientiousness about it, and they don't care. But as Christians, we do have to be different. I tell people all the time, I'm not going to fault you for looking at somebody and finding same sex attractive. I can't. I don't believe you can help what you feel. But marrying same sex? Absolutely not. That goes right against the grain of what God said. A man's semen was not designed to be pumped into another man's ass. It was to be given to a woman to fertilize an egg to create life. And though there is pleasure from same sex relationships that is undeniable, it still flies against God's original intent and design. So instead of hitting me, go get your anger out with God. I'm not the one that wrote this stuff. And that's what society does. Shoot the messenger, harass the messenger, intimidation and fear because I don't agree with you. So you want the freedom to be gay, but you won't allow me the freedom to say, I don't agree with that. Are you not being a hypocrite? If you're so confident that it's right, then does it really matter what I think? Shouldn't. But the fact you get so angry about it tells me you have something called conviction. That one little thing that's saying, oh, somebody's standing up against me. Why do you need everybody's approval? Because you have a self-esteem issue, because you have a guilty conscience issue, because you saying that God doesn't exist and standards don't exist. Why are you getting so mad at me? 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 Because you're convicted. Because somewhere deep in all the layers of bullshit that you've put into your head, you know that something ain't right about that. And if you watch people, they try to convince themselves. A young lady from a former place I worked at admitted to me she's part of a throuple. Okay. She is involved with I don't know if they're a boyfriend and girlfriend or a husband and wife, and none of the three of them are what I call pretty and attractive. I said, boy, that just sounds like a big, greasy, sweaty, gross mess. And you look at society, they're trying all these different things. You got married couples trying threesomes and foursomes. A man says, I want to see you do a woman. She says, I want to see you do a guy. I know a guy that makes 250,000 a year as a sales guy. He's got a beautiful wife. She got breast implants, and now they've opened the door to couples. Let's be honest, folks. Let's stop. We don't need to listen to everything the preacher says. They want to sit there and tell you that they've never lusted beyond anybody outside their wife. Well, good for them. But marriage gets old and marriage gets boring and it gets dry and you start going through the desert on a horse with no name. And when the women start to grow fat and change and the boobies sag all the way down, I don't care what anybody says. There's no sexual desire anymore. And this is why couples start experimenting and playing. Folks, we need to be honest about sexuality. The Christian church can chant, scream, and yell all day long about sin. But I tell you, if I marry a woman who's beautiful and 10 years later, she looks like a damn mess, and you're going to tell me I'm supposed to get all excited about having sex with her? I can't. That thing between our legs doesn't lie. It gets aroused at what it gets aroused at. So I'm sensitive to gays and lesbians. I'm sensitive to couples. I'm just saying what's right and what's wrong. My personal opinion, marriage is an institute by God and it's honorable. My personal opinion in America, marriage is a dangerous thing that needs to be avoided. But so does fucking women and not marrying them. Having friends with benefits doesn't please God. We're human and we make mistakes. And as Christians, we need to confess those sins to God and make an attempt to walk out of that. You're not going to hear this on a church on Sunday morning. We don't need to beat up on gays and lesbians like Reverend Fred Phelps, who was a complete clown of a preacher, Westboro Baptist Church, teaching the whole family to hate. Why was he so against homosexuality sex? Did he look at a man and feel a boner? You know, I'm going to tell you something. A lot of people who harp on sexual sins end up committing them. There was a preacher in Colorado at a very popular church, found out he was getting gay massages. That literally destroyed the church. And you know what? The people that went to that church were dumb. It was Colorado Springs, and Colorado Christianity is a mile wide and an inch deep. And I would say it to anybody's face. There's not a lot of true spirituality in Colorado. If you don't believe me, watch the way they drive, watch the way they live. You can't tell any difference from Christians and the non-Christians. I hate Colorado. I hate it. Not the beauty of the state, but the people that live there. I do not like it. Colorado people are caught up in SUV, self-importance, and Christian church reflects all of that stupid culture. You enshrine a preacher, you got to hear this guy, you got to hear this guy, and he's getting his dick sucked at a massage table. When are we going to learn that nobody needs to be put on a pedestal? Not me, not you, not anybody else. When are we going to learn to listen to the truth and not enshrine Pacific Ocean, Asia, or anybody else, but walk away with that truth and put feet to it? When are we going to learn that we're all made of clay? When are we going to learn that even a preacher who's immersed in the Word of God can still have feelings and still fall? Are you praying for his protection? Have I gone down some lonely, forlorn, sinful roads? Have I had men touch me and suck me? Oh, yeah. It felt awesome. Was I in love with them? Did I want a gay relationship with them? No. Have I had it done recently? No. When we have a broken society, think about it as an earthquake. You got an earthquake fault, and you got villages or towns and cities on either side of that. And when that thing shifts, it causes fallout, cracks, collapsed buildings, collapsed bridges, ground sinking, whatever. When you have a society of women that has become narcissistic, selfish, and can never say three simple words out of a sincere heart, I'm sorry, or I was wrong. You think that doesn't affect men? You think when I used to sit at a steam bath in Colorado and a decent looking man, we'd start talking, we're sitting in the steam room naked, and he puts his hand on my leg, says, man, you're really good looking. You think we don't need compliments? Women don't tell me I'm good looking in this society, ever. Even in my workplace, women will compliment each other's hair. They'll compliment the gay guy dressing up as a woman. I'll get my hair cut. Never get a compliment from most of the women. And that works on you. You start to think, gosh, maybe I should have been gay. The women aren't showing an interest. But I can't. I won't. There was a couple guys on my channel that harassed the hell out of me. One was head and shoulders above the rest. His Facebook admits he's bisexual. And he just wanted to show hate, stalk, re-uploads my videos. I mean, the guy clearly is a psychological disaster and works in the military. Scary. This is America. We breed scary people. And I find that interesting that for being the number one Christian nation in the world, we've got the most dangerous fucking people right here. And if you're honest like I am, you will be hated, scorned, and harassed. Because Americans don't want truth. They want to bullshit themselves. I don't care if another man thinks I'm good looking. I don't care if I go down to the club and a guy looks at me and says, wow, you're good looking. I don't have a problem with that. I don't act phobic. I don't go and walk off with them in the back corner and jack off. Most men, I'm not attracted to me. 99.9% of the men I don't find attractive. They smell, they're hairy, they're sweaty, they're gross, their clothing. There's nothing about them that even remotely excites me. I like women. Sometimes I've liked androgynous males that look like they could pass for femi or masculine, and you got a lot of them over in Europe. But I'm not into two balls and a stick. We weren't made for that. But women have become so difficult. They tease us, they lead us on, they dress scintillating. You show an interest and they run like a herd of gazelle. And while the church is yelling and screaming about masturbation, and you look at most Christian marriages, go in and look closely at most Christian marriages. They're boring as hell. It seems like they're acting. The media doesn't help. The culture around us doesn't help. It pushes sex at every turn. America is the biggest producer of pornography in the world. Why is that? Because we're such a family Christian, Judeo Christian ethic, right? No, we're not. When a man's not getting his needs met, when a woman's not getting their needs met, if they can't get it through a natural, God ordained way, they will find a surrogate. If a woman's rejected and despised and wasn't endowed with good looks, and another girl comes up and puts her arm around her and says, I like you, the flame has been ignited. When a boy who's teased and made fun of and all that, another man feels him and masturbates him, he may at first repulse it, but he may go, my gosh, somebody's showing me attention. When you, Christian, and you, people in the world, treat other people with scorn and rejection, do you realize that you could be that domino that's pushing them into the dark world? That's why you need to be nice to people. That's why I need to treat people with respect, whether you agree with them or not. You might be the difference of them saying, nah, I don't need to be gay. Showing a little love and kindness along the way will keep people from jumping into that open sexual deviancy, which is what it is. And I'm going to say it again, sin is pleasurable for a season. I will tell you this, I do not understand anal sex with men. The idea that a guy sticks his penis up a sphincter that has poop coming out of it is just deplorable. Men say they like it because it reaches the back of their testicles. They said it's a more intense orgasm. I don't know. I'm not trying. And that is the fastest way to disease. That lining was not made to be an entrance, it's an exit. And it's interesting to note that AIDS showed up in parallel with the amount of butt fucking that was going on. And they say that that originally came from monkeys. So that means somebody fucked a monkey. That's gross. They showed a Filipino, some lady had a video. I'm surprised Facebook didn't shut it down. He walked up and was butt fucking a goat. And this was years ago. And I said, man, why do you got this posted on here? This is disgusting. I ended up blocking her. You got women having sex with dogs. I've talked about that before. And women, I tell you what, men, stay away from women that have dogs as pets. Stay away from them. That's a cult all by itself. I am not gayophobic. I don't have homophobia. There's times I've seen a naked man and looked at him and thought, wow, he's nice looking. I don't think that's wrong. But when you redefine sex and you redefine relationships, that it's okay to marry same sex, and you got men calling their men their husband, or women calling their women their wives. Now we have this further complicated mess of 85,000 genders. There's two, male and female. God created them. What gives society the right to usurp God's authority and redefine? I know men personally that sewed up their penis to look like a taco, and they got breast implants, and they're wearing girl clothes and bras, and they're running around trying to get people in trouble at the workplace because they accidentally say, okay, thank you, sir. I'm not a sir, I'm a ma'am. And then they go run to HR. We're living in a dangerous world, folks. They're forcing you to call them what they want you to call them. And I tell people, don't use any genders. Say, okay, thank you. I work with men that are growing, well, they've got the glue on 2-inch fingernails and carrying Michael Kors bags. I can't stop people from doing that. I just learned to be nice, and in the workplace, you get along with everybody and get through the day. You don't have to agree with that crap. And I noticed something in our world today. In my workplace, the women will all giggle and surround themselves like flies on fresh poo to all the gay men, laughing and giggling and snickering with them. And me, well, I'm ignored. It's a fascinating dynamic, isn't it? Upside down. This world that turns me. Good is evil, and evil is good today. Even lesbian women I work with, they want to act like a dude. The women love them. Me, a single, decent looking guy for my age, no interest. None. So it doesn't matter, my opinion, but just watching all that tells me society doesn't like good anymore. They gravitate towards the darkness. But when you're a Christian and you start to understand the Bible, you start to learn that this is not right and this is not right. And suddenly it shocks you. We're living in a perverse generation. Facebook has got young ladies around the world showing their budding nipples, no bra, jumping up and down. And sometimes you get a nipple peek. And Facebook will shut down any written comment that they don't agree with about spherical heating, but they're not shutting down these videos, which is child porn. I tried an experiment and wrote them all up for child nudity. We did not remove the video, they said. Why not? Because they're lazy. Everything's done by AI. But they had me on speed dial. Isn't that something? We live in a world that's juxtaposed to its own self. Don't let the society tell you what is right and wrong. Go to the book, the Bible, and let God tell you. We are sinners saved by grace as Christians, and even Christians can wrestle with same sex desires. You don't need to beat yourself up for it. You need to cry out to God. That's all you can do. Thank you for listening, viewers.